Why is it then that when parents are clearly trying to do the right thing and to, take their child to a mental health expert, to get their child assessed, to make sure that they are on the healthiest path for their child and they get that expert advice, teachers do whatever the heck they want anyway? Hello, welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you so much for the support. On my channel, I like to give my opinion and perspective on things that are happening today, things that I think actually matter to everyday people, especially those of us trying to raise kids in the insanity known as today's society. I do like to talk about current events and politics, and my perspective does tend to be more on the conservative side of things. Please like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and also share this video with others. Also, be sure you are subscribed. Help me to grow this channel to hopefully reach more people that value logic, reason, and sanity. Also, be sure to find me on Rumble under Outspoken Samantha in the event that YouTube decides I have violated their community standards and chooses to kick me off their platform forever. That being said, let's get into today's topic. As I was scrolling through Twitter today, I came across this article and just reading it just put my stomach in knots, but I really just felt like I needed to share it. So I kind of have some notes written down. I'll read part of it. The title is, I asked my daughter's teachers not to call her a boy, and they reported me to social services. So I'm going to read, there's several stories compiled into this article. I'll read as much as I can, but also offer my thoughts, and then, perhaps just kind of summarize other parts because it is quite lengthy, and I don't want to keep you here all night. Well, I do, because I enjoy talking to you, but I understand we all have things to do. So the first part of it reads, like many parents on a Sunday evening, Patricia Chalmers was busy checking for unwashed sports kit in her 14-year-old daughter's school bag when she discovered something rather perplexing. Crumpled up inside was a letter from her teacher regarding a project. While the contents made sense, Patricia was confused by the name. It was addressed to Lex Chalmers. Her daughter's name was Esme. Instinctively, I suspected something was wrong, but I waited until the next morning before I phoned the school, says Patricia, 49-year-old mother of two from Swindon. This family is based in the UK, FYI. Esme had been dressing differently for months, no longer wearing the skirts or dresses she loved when she was younger, and was instead wearing baggy hoodies and jeans. She chopped off her long hair into a short crop. I was absolutely fine with it. She's a teenager. She can dress how she wants. But I'd also discovered she was ordering chest binders, which flatten the breasts, and I was worried she'd hurt herself. I'd read up on gender identity and was reassured her she could be as gender non-conforming as she wanted, but I wasn't going to let her harm her body. She was still developing, so I wondered if the change of name was connected to this. Patricia said she did call the school and email the school to try to figure out what was going on. The school did not respond until a day later, and their response was, in keeping with their equity, inclusion, and diversity policy, they had socially transitioned my daughter and were referring to her with the gender-neutral name Lex and they/them pronouns. So clearly this mom was really distraught about what was happening. Her daughter was on the autism spectrum and had also dealt with depression and anxiety. So as a mom in her daughter's life, as someone who has a full view, a comprehensive understanding of the struggles that her daughter was going through, she knew that this social transition and all of these other things compiled onto the issues her daughter was already dealing with could be harmful to her. So being the person in her daughter's life, her parent, not the friend, not the teacher, not the counselor, not anybody else, but the parent who could address this from a holistic, an entire view of what her daughter needed, she also understood that boundaries were crucial. She was ready, she was flexible in her daughter expressing her identity in different ways with her hair and with her clothes, but she knew that these extreme measures could be detrimental to her child, and these are risks, and these are things that the school didn't seem to take into account, or didn't want to take into account, or didn't care to take into account. This is why it's so irresponsible and so dangerous for teachers to be pushing kids in this direction, to make such big and drastic changes when there could be so many other factors leading to why a child is struggling in some way. And when these teachers and activists are just not taking into account the child as a whole and all of these other things that need to be thought about, and really causing more harm than good. But this is becoming the norm in so many schools for these activist teachers to make these decisions for these kids and push them down this path. And they feel absolutely no obligation to include parents in the discussion at all in the decision-making process. And they don't care if it destroys the child. They don't care if it ends up ruining this person's life a few years down the road if they happen to change their mind. All they care about is turning these kids into their little cheerleaders for their own identities and for their own ideology and activism. And it doesn't matter what the long-term effects are, as long as these activist teachers feel validated. And this is what happens when you foster a society where narcissism and this entitlement and this self-love and self-care and everything is turned inwards, where all you care about is yourself. Then you lose sight of how you could be possibly and potentially harming others, because all that matters is in that moment that you receive that validation. And our kids are being the target of it. Our kids are being sacrificed to it. The article goes on to read, "The situation is becoming a minefield for parents. Over the last 3 years, more than 850 parents of trans-identified adolescents and young people have contacted us from all over the UK seeking support, with many of these reporting that schools had changed their child's name and pronouns without consent," says a spokeswoman for Bayswater Support, a group set up by parents in 2019. "Parents tell us that when they try to engage constructively with schools, it is often implied that they are a risk to their own children. Teachers should be more mindful of the most common underlying conditions like autism, ADHD, trauma, anxiety, depression, etc., and be wary of inadvertently pushing minors towards irreversible medical and surgical treatments." Tanya Carter, spokeswoman for Safe Schools Alliance, agrees. "This is an increasing issue, with schools acting as if they have the right to strip parents of parental responsibility, but they don't. Only courts do. The misapprehension that schools should keep secrets from parents is so entrenched that there is now even a checkbox school management system to say whether or not a child's preferred pronouns should only be used in schools. But the UK government is clear that part of the parental responsibility is naming the child and agreeing to any change of name." So there are a couple of more stories in this article just like this. I'll link the article in the description box so you could read it in its entirety. But I do think that it's important. But there's another story of a mom named Sally Mealer, whose daughter Eleanor was transed in school starting at the age of 14. I guess her daughter had started at a new school and was struggling with making friends, and she was being bullied and just having a really hard time, which, makes her more vulnerable. It makes her more vulnerable to accept anything that's going to help her feel included. So she decided to join a couple of after-school clubs to hopefully make friends, and she ended up in an LGBTQ club. It does say in the article that her daughter felt awkward being the only straight person in this club initially, but it did not take long before her daughter had adopted a non-binary identity, a gender-neutral name, and started using they/them pronouns. And Sally, the mom, only found out because a friend had told her. She was very concerned because her daughter as well was also on the autism spectrum. The article says that they, meaning her parents, suspected that their daughter might be autistic, so they called the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services for advice. They were told that this was a common thing and that there were a lot of stories coming in that seemed to link girls who identify as non-binary with autism. The parents and Eleanor did end up meeting with a clinical psychologist, and this clinical psychologist, an expert in mental health, specifically advised them not to do this social transition, not to affirm her in this social transition, because it could be detrimental to her mental health. So Sally, this mom, with the advice of an expert, takes this information to the school and says, "This is not a good idea. I have had my daughter, assessed by an expert. We need to stop doing this social transition." And what did the school do? Of course, they completely changed their ways and recognized the massive harm that they were causing on this child, and they listened to the direction of the child psychologist and apologized to the parents and worked together as a team to get Eleanor back on a healthy track, right? No, that is not what they did. Of course not. They called Child Protective Services on Sally and reported her because and accused her of potentially being abusive to her daughter. Thankfully, CPS did come and meet with the family and found that these abuse allegations were completely false and that Eleanor was totally safe. But despite the parents bringing this advice from a clinical psychologist to the school and the report from CPS saying that their daughter was safe and not being abused, the school continued to report her and her family to CPS for months afterwards. And even after getting all of this direction, from these experts, from different sources, the school continued to cause harm. And they even continued to socially transition her daughter to the point where even years later, her daughter is now requesting to go by male pronouns. And one thing that completely astonishes me among the many things that completely just blow my mind in this, we are constantly being told by teachers that parents don't have a say in child's education. In our child's education, we don't get to tell teachers what they put in the classroom. We don't get to dictate to them how to do their job because we're not the experts. We didn't go to school to get a degree in education. We don't know what we're talking about. We need to listen to them because they're the experts. Why is it then that when parents are clearly trying to do the right thing and to take their child to a mental health expert, to get their child assessed, to make sure that they are on the healthiest path for their child, and they get that expert advice, teachers do whatever the heck they want anyway? They don't listen to the experts. They don't listen to the people that are mental health experts for children with different struggles and disorders and mental health conditions. They don't listen to the recommendations, proving that they are clearly more concerned about their agenda and what they want to accomplish with kids over their well-being when they won't even listen to somebody saying this is going to cause harm to this child. I am just saying. This whole thing is just bonkers to me, but this is the world we live in. A couple of side notes. In the article, it says that Sally, when she found out that her daughter had adopted this non-binary identity, she had no idea what it was. She had never heard of it. A friend of hers told her it was, it's kind of like the new goth. So she thought it was a fashion trend. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that parents are making right now is not knowing what these things are. We just kind of assume that, if our kids haven't been exposed to it, then we don't really need to know what this is. Or if our kids haven't brought it to our attention, then we've kind of dodged a bullet and we don't need to look up this information. And nothing could be further from the truth. We have got to understand what it is that our kids are being exposed to so that we can have informed discussions with them, so that we can be the ones to initiate those conversations. And if you're coming at it from an informed perspective, your kids are going to have a higher likelihood of listening to you, I should say. I just remember when I was a teenager, I just assumed my parents didn't know anything. There's no possible way that they could understand anything I was going through. There's just, they're just so old. Their time of being a teenager was so long ago, they just couldn't possibly understand. And the people that I wanted to talk to were my friends. But, if you come to your child from a place that says, I know what this is, I have looked up the information, and you can have an informed conversation about it, there's a higher likelihood that they're going to listen to you and they're going to want to hear what you have to say, and you're going to reinforce with them that you are that safe space and that you are that person in their lives that has their best interests at heart and that is truly looking out for their well-being. Just another little side note I wanted to bring up. I thought it was really interesting in the first story with Esme how she changed her hair and she changed her wardrobe. And I think about myself at that age, and you guys can let me know your experiences as a teenager. Well, leave them in the comments because I always love hearing these stories. But at the end of 9th grade, I was 14 years old and it was the second to last day of school. And I had long hair, but I had gone, for whatever reason, just decided at the last minute to go chop my hair off, and it was short. I look back now and I'm like, why did I do that? That was so ugly. But it kind of looked like this. And I couldn't find a picture of myself. We didn't have social media back then, so I don't even know if I even have any pictures of myself with that haircut, but it was short. And I went to school the next day, and I remember even my teacher being like, and my friends jokingly for a long time after that, until my hair grew back out, they called me Sir. I also remember kind of in that phase, at the age of probably 15 or so, I went through this phase of I was just wearing these really baggy jeans. I had a big hole in it, and I kind of wear this big navy blue jacket, and I wore these things almost every day, and I hope and pray that I washed them as often as I needed to, but this was literally my look. It wasn't very feminine, it wasn't very girly, but I never questioned whether or not I was a girl. I never thought for a second that I might be a boy. It was just something I was going through at that time. And we all have those experiences, especially as teenagers, where we're just trying to figure out what it is, how we're comfortable within ourselves. And it's just such a crazy time. Our brains are all over the place, our hormones are all over the place, our emotions are all over the place, our bodies are doing weird things that we're just like, what the heck? And everything is uncomfortable and everyone is uncomfortable, but it's a natural part of the journey. And most parents are open to their kids exploring their identity in a way that makes them feel comfortable, in a non-permanent, non-medical, non-surgical way, but allowing them, kids to dress in a way that makes them feel comfortable. If you want to cut your hair, if you want to, get something pierced, most parents are just like, I understand this exploration at this time in your lives. It's fine. We all go through it. It's just the insanity of allowing kids to make those permanent decisions when there is absolutely no possible way that their brain is developed enough to understand what those long-term implications are. I cannot imagine the person that I was at 14, 15 years old with that short hair and these baggy clothes, that person determining making the determination of who I was going to be for the rest of my life, because I am a completely different person now. I love the color pink. I love things that are covered in sparkle and bling. I love things that are soft and girly and fuzzy and bright, and that was not me when I was 14, 15 years old. I hated the color pink. I was not particularly girly. I was just completely a different person. And we all go through that. I'm sure any one of us at this point in time in our lives would look back on our teenage years and say, that was not me at all. I was completely different. But it's a healthy exploration, and then eventually you do figure out who you are, and these kids are just being led down this devastating and detrimental path. And if we as parents don't take the reins and don't take the charge, someone else is going to do it. Someone else is going to do it. And I see stories every single day of parents that are like, I have no idea what to do. And of course, it's not a foolproof, 100% guarantee that, you could talk to your child about everything under the sun. It's not guaranteed that they're not going to go down this path, or they're not going to be influenced with this stuff in some way, but you got to increase your chances and just not be afraid and just face this issue head on, and just be your kid's parent, be your kid's warrior, be your kid's protector, be your child's advocate, because you know them better than anybody else. You know what they need, and you know what is best for their well-being. And you know that who they are today is a really good chance it's going to change, and it's going to go through a lot more phases before they kind of settle into that identity. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please like this video. What else can you do? You can share it. My mind went blank. Like this video, leave a comment below, share it with others. Also, be sure you are subscribed to my channel. Hit the notification bell so you can be notified every time I post a video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.